one person who I came up with, he described bodybuilding prep as controlled starvation. Like eventually, if you keep going, you will die. Like that's essentially starvation.
Even though you've got lots of muscle.
Yeah, it's controlled starvation. Like you will eventually strip away that muscle if you diet for enough time.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's controlled starvation. So the body does eventually give up. It does eventually look worse.
Yeah.
It's such, again, we go back to the fascination. It's an art. Dieting for a bodybuilding show isn't just do this cardio, eat that broccoli, take these drugs. That is like maybe the surface. There's an art to standing on stage.
So you have 15 years of experience now in training, but also you've coached a lot of people who've won competitions. And have any of your clients got a pro card?
Yeah, I've got a IFBB pro card through Karen Gibson. She won figure in 2019, the British. I've got clients who've got pro cards in other federations as well. So
we could probably talk for days about the art. But can you try and distill the essence of 15 years creating champions and being a champion yourself in terms of the art of a prep?
I've only been prepping people since, for a living, since 2017. So still a bit of time.
Good experience.
But
the results show.
Yeah. As a whole though, it's kind of like, you have everything dialed to a T. Like the minutes you're sleeping, the grams of salt you're eating, the grams of food you're eating, everything on the anabolic side. Training is beyond meticulous. I think most competitors will tell you this. If you do like a 16-week prep, those last 8 weeks, because you're so dialed in and focused, you don't really remember much of it. You remember the start of that 8 weeks, and then next thing you know, you're at the show. You're just so dialed in and in tune that everything is just clockwork. There's no thought. There's very little thinking involved. From a competitor side of you, a coach side of you, slightly different, but it is monotonous. But yeah, when you're dialed in that much, and that's why a lot of people struggle after they've done the show, because they can't take themselves out of that.
That's interesting.
That mindset. It's you are very much locked in. I've had clients, and myself obviously, where it's a month after the show and you're struggling to kind of get back to normality just because you've had just this dialed in focus for that amount of time. Obviously, you throw starvation into that equation as well, and it does compound and seems like a lot bigger.
Do you feel depressed after a show? In that sort of interlude period,
so we get what's called the post-show blues. That's very common. So people no longer have this goal anymore.
Right.
So that's why it's quite important to kind of set new goals going forward.
Yep.
So honestly, there will be some people, guys and girls, who stand off stage. They'll look at their calendar for the next year and they'll already have picked a show. The moment they get off stage, like that night as they're sitting having their cheat meal at night.
Blowout.
Their blowout, yeah. They'll be sitting there planning their next show.
Not recommended for gut health, but
yeah, I know, yeah. Speaking of which, moves us to our next topic. They'll be legit planning their next show. So that's how bodybuilding works and how it should work post show. But depression, maybe not so much depression, but definitely post show blues is definitely a real thing.
And are the principles of the prep the same for everyone, or does it depend on if they're male or female, if they're like newly into it or advanced, if they're on gear or not on gear? How does it change or differ?
So kind of a blanket statement, I would say females have to do more than men in terms of suffering. Less muscle mass, less capability to lose body fat as efficiently.
Right.
So in that aspect, yes. There are some women who do have an easy time of it, and there are some men who really have to suffer to get remotely in shape.
And just for the listener, because remember, this is not it's not a bodybuilding podcast. So when you say in shape, can you try and contextualize it? Because typically, I think the classic listener to Inside Matters would see someone at 15% body fat, 12% body fat, and go, "Oh, that's athletic physique.
Yeah.
They look amazing."